Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Other Side of Sales. I'm Kasey Jones.
And I'm Ashleigh Early.
And today we are super excited to have Sara Beam join us. Sara is a sales professional with over 10 years of experience, and she is founder and CEO of Virago Ventures, a full-service sales enablement, optimization, and strategic marketing company. So welcome, Sara.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
So just to start us off, give us kind of the quick background on your sort of sales journey, your story. How did you get to where you are? How did you get to founding this company?
I'm just excited for the alliteration of Sara's sales story.
Yeah.
Sara was selling with Sara. Okay, great. Well, I guess I feel like I kind of got pushed into sales or fell into sales, to be honest. Because if you would have asked, like if you'd have talked to me 10 years ago and been like, you're starting a sales company, I would have laughed in your face, because when I graduated college, I honestly didn't like sales. I just, I went to college, I got a business degree, business management was my degree. And then I graduated and was like, oh, I have to find a job now. So I, applied for like everything I possibly could. And coming out of college, you don't have a lot of experience. So sales, I think, is a really good entry level when you're coming out of college, because you don't necessarily need a lot of experience. You get a lot of that because, most of your compensation is tied up in commission. So you're able to kind of get your foot in the door a little faster with sales. So my first position was at a third-party Verizon retailer. So I thought it was Verizon, but it was actually a third-party retailer. They're a really prominent retailer, but I just had no idea what I was getting into until I was going through the actual training process. So did that for a couple of months, but it was commission only. Only. Yeah. So there would be days where I would work 12 hours and not make any money. If nobody came in to buy any cell phones that day, I didn't make any money. So I didn't do that very long. I did that for about 8 months. And then I moved into a call center position, which was an inbound call center that had opened up in the city that I was living in. So it was a new company. And what they did was they sold TV, phone, and internet to people that were moving. So if you were to set up your electric or your gas service, they would transfer you to us, and then we would help you set up your TV, phone, and internet services. So that was an inbound call center. I was on the phones for probably about a year, worked my way up, and then I became a supervisor. So that was one of the reasons why I took that position, was because I knew there would be a lot of growth opportunities. And I worked at that company for about 4.5 years. And then I left it because we actually moved from Kentucky to Los Angeles. So a nice, couple 1,000-mile move. So that took some adjusting too.
The move took some adjusting, or going from Kentucky to California took some adjusting?
Girl, all of it. Are you kidding? All of it.
Did you drive or fly?
We drove, which was awesome. So I suggest anyone do that if you can. If you have the opportunity to drive.
I second it. I did California to DC, and we drove it.
Yep. So beautiful.
So beautiful and
so beautiful.
So exhausting.
So exhausting. And we did it with 2 huskies, and they made the drive with us. But it was awesome. It was one of the best experiences I've ever had. So,
and now that you've mentioned dogs, we're going to have to insist on photos of the dog to post along with this podcast, because this is a very dog friendly.
Yes, we're nerds. Yeah.
No problem. So we moved out here. So that was an adjustment. And, we moved out here. Actually, I didn't have a job for, I left my job in Kentucky not having a job here. We were making the move regardless anyway. I was actually flying out here to look for an apartment at the beginning of December in 2015. And on my way out here, I got a phone call from a company, and they, offered me an interview, and I was so thankful, because I applied for literally hundreds of jobs. If you're trying to move across the country, it's very difficult to find anyone who will take you serious.
Oh yeah.
Because how do they know if I'm really going to come? I don't blame them. Hiring people, I understand. So found the job, was very grateful. And I was there for 2.5 years, and I was their first outbound sales rep. So I really built their
wow.
sales process. When I started, I didn't have anything that was pre-created for me in terms of like scripts or email templates or anything like that. So I really had to create a lot from scratch. And I did that, became their sales director. And then since then, I've worked with a few different startups, and I just kind of found that I really like, helping sales teams and organizations with their processes a little bit more than actually doing the selling. I mean, I like selling now. It took a long time to like it, but I do like it now. But at first, I hated it. I wasn't competitive. I didn't want to like force people to buy stuff that I didn't think they needed. It took me a while to understand sales. And then now I found that I really enjoy that process, because I think the process is really important. And if you have a good process in place, it makes the whole sales job a lot easier, because there's a lot that you can't control. So if you have a process, you kind of can control it a little bit better. So so now I just decided I was going to launch a company to I'm a consultant, but then also want to kind of build this company that's able to work with smaller businesses or medium-sized teams to help with processes. And I'm good at sales, but I'd love to eventually build it out into this organization where I have a partner that helps with marketing and a partner that helps with finance, and all of these different services that we can offer to businesses. And I prefer it to be women centric, if that can ever be possible, because I don't know, I just like working with women. So that would be really cool to kind of have this like women team of just awesomeness and adding this value to businesses. So it's kind of where I see it long term, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's super interesting. And frankly, I think your feelings and your approach to selling and what makes you not like it is actually what I think makes women really good at being in sales, right? Is like we don't like the bullshit. We like kind of doing right by our customers. We like being kind of honest and helpful and all these other things. We really shy away from anything that feels sort of icky. And it's funny, I had a conversation with a woman this morning. We were talking about how different it is to motivate a woman on a sales team versus a man. And now this is, I'm stereotyping here, because this is definitely not true of all women, but like some women are very competitive and some women aren't competitive in the same way. And so for me, when I was in sales, every boss I've ever had, they'll always try to motivate me by pitting me against someone else on the team of like, yeah, don't you want to beat that guy? And no, that does not work for me. I like to beat myself, right? I've got that hustle and I love being motivated that way. But if you try to get me in this like close competition with someone on my team, that actually really demotivates me. And
too. Like it works the opposite.
And I'm the opposite. I do get really motivated by, I like being better than the person next to me, but not when it comes to something that's really important. So I am not here for a competition that's going to be me or them. It's just like, but whenever there are like power days, like who can close more in a day, who can do more meetings a day, do more dials. Oh, I am there and I'm competitive, and I am unplugging your phone, and I am throwing sticky notes, and all in the spirit of fun with people who understand and do it back at me.
But that's hard. That's the environment I think it's hard for women to thrive in, because some aren't like that and some aren't. Like you might want to like, you want to win, so you're gonna unplug their phone, but you don't mean that mean. But to me, I'd be like, oh, I should unplug my phone.
But I think, and I'll say this, here's I think the difference where I think being a woman can kind of come into it. I always knew rather instinctively. I knew who I could do that to and with, and who I couldn't. Whereas the guys in the team who were like that were like that with everybody.
Exactly. So,
it's kind of this I am motivated like that, so I can be like, you want to get me to do something, tell me I can't. But I also know my sister is not motivated like that. My mother wouldn't be motivated by either of those things. So that depth of experience that comes from being shoehorned into things a lot of your life, even in subtle ways, it opens your eyes to, okay, well, not everyone's going to work like this. So maybe I'll try and figure it out.
And that's, that's part of being like a sales leader, is being able to figure out what motivates this person versus what motivates that
Absolutely.
person. It's really hard, you know, to do that. Cause yeah, I was the same way. If you pitted me against someone else, I almost worked the opposite. And if you were, you know, it almost was like a negative reaction in my brain, and I would just like shut down. And versus being like, you know, I was competitive against myself though, is, you know, that was where I found a lot of I enjoyed sales. Was I was, instead of competing against other people, I was competing against myself. But I haven't been in an environment in a while where I've had to compete against someone else. I've been a lot on a sales team of my own, you know, like either a small sales team, or I've like been in charge of the sales team. So then like my competition is other departments, you know, and I don't want that to be competitive. It's like, you know, everyone should be on one team if you're like, you know, working for the same end goal. But sales is such a hard role, and it's very visual. So if you're not performing well, everyone knows it. And that can be really, really hard for women too.
Yes.
That's a good point.
You know, that took me a long time to get used to. Is like, everyone knows where you're at. Everyone knows how much you're selling. They know how many calls you've made and this and that. And it's just like, it can be hard to like, to be okay with that.
No, that's a really interesting point. I never really thought about that, because it is so visual. And especially when you're in that place of you're doing everything right, but nothing's going right.
Exactly.
That's the worst place to be in, and go into the office and have your head held high, because you're going in, everyone's seeing you doing everything right, and yet you're not moving up the leaderboard. And it's not the disdain, it's the pity.
Yeah. And then you feel anxious, and like, you know, so, and then, you know, there's not a lot of good, you know, support systems in a sale. Like, some sales leaders are great, but, you know, and I can say that I'm guilty of not always being the most empathetic leader, or trying to like be there for them. Cause it's like, you know, your job is to sell. So if you're not selling, you know, you're not doing well. It's like, it's so visual. It's hard. You can't like, you know, hide behind anything. So that's why I think processes are so important, because that's going to help hold someone accountable. Because if you're just doing random things, you don't know what's working, but then, you know, you also don't know if they're not doing something they should be doing that you can help them with. So if you have those processes in place, you can hold people accountable a lot better.
Absolutely.
Also, the process can be so motivating, where it's like, you know, when you are going through when you're going through a slump, you're going through kind of a lull. If you don't have that process to kind of like have faith in and rely on and like hold on to, you don't have anything. And it's, you need that, like, I don't know, it can be very zen of like, hey, I might have totally kind of sucked wind these last couple of weeks, but I believe enough in the process of what I'm doing, and I will, you know, keep executing, and I have faith that those numbers kind of turn around.
Yeah, but it can be hard to be okay with that, because people are like, they're just expecting you to sell. So it's like, you know, why isn't it happening? So,
it's a question too of having the experience of having seen it. Because when you've gone through a slump and you know, okay, I'm in a slump, I'm going to keep my activity high, I'm going to keep my prospecting up, and I know within 2 to 3 weeks it will be okay. If you've done that before, it's easier to trust on the other side. That is one of the most common reasons I think I see people quit early in their SDR careers, is because they hit a slump and they have no reason to trust that they will come out of it. And then anytime you get into a new job, and it's especially if you get into a new job and you hit a slump quickly, or you're surrounded by people like, oh, we've never had problems. It's like, I know. Oh, great. I'm literally, even though they're probably BSing you.
They're lying you. And, you know, and you have to, you know, if you find ways to find little wins in the whole sales process, it makes it easier. So, you know, even if someone tells me no, I look at that as a win, because I'm like, at least I know that I don't need to waste my time on you anymore. The worst thing is when they don't answer at all. That's the worst.
The ghosting.
No response at all. The ghosting. That is the worst. It's like, it's okay if you want to not buy from me or purchase from me. That's fine. Just at least tell me no, so that I'll leave you alone, because otherwise I will keep trying to follow up with you until I get some kind of answer. And that's just the worst. So if you can find positives in every part of the sales process, you're going to enjoy your job a lot more. And you're not going to get as stressed out about it because, you know, if the only thing you're motivated by and working towards is a close or that sale, it's going to be bad when you're in those slump periods. Cause yeah, you're going to just quit because, you know, it's not as easy. Some things are easier to sell than others, and some times of the year easier to sell than others, you know.
Absolutely. So I'm curious, okay, so now that you're working with businesses and with startups, what do you think is some of the most common, I don't know, mistakes that you see sales teams making?
Let's see. I think one is not individualizing things. So, you know, not individualizing the training process for each type of person, and also not individualizing your messaging, you know. So like when I started with the very first startup, I had 3 days or so of kind of training. You know, they did the best they could, very small team, and I had 3 days or so of training, and that really just kind of explained to me the product and the company and kind of things like that, but not really how to sell. But luckily I had worked for that call center for so many years, and if you've ever worked in a call center, you know it is structured. Like, you know, everything's recorded, everything's scripted, you know. So I feel like my foundation is really solid because I, you know, kind of have this type of sales kind of like messaging that is a little different, right? So I take a lot of stuff I learned from the call center and I bring it into the startup environment. So I want to kind of bring this structure. And I think when I first started at the very first startup, I was like kind of overwhelming for them because, you know, I'm sure you guys have been around startups, very relaxed, you know, much more of a relaxed type of environment sometimes. You know, there's not as many like rules, you know, and that could be a good thing. But when you've come from a really structured environment to that, it's like, what?
It's super disorienting.
It's like, what? Like, why aren't you like breathing down my neck all day? But that's really a good thing that they're not breathing down your neck all day. But when you're used to a lot of accountability, you know, that type of environment can be really terrifying.
Well, it's also it's the stress of kind of the what do I do now?
Exactly.
That's a big thing a lot of people underestimate. So I'm really curious here because I've seen a lot of debate out there, and I love, especially because you come from a call center. How do you define the difference between an SDR program or kind of an inbound or outbound inside sales program and a call center? What's the difference, and when do you need which?
I don't know. That's actually a good question. I've not worked with any startups that have needed that's been big enough to need like a call center type, you know. So I guess, I don't know. Explain your question a little better.
No, totally fair. That's a good shot because that was really broad. So my theory has been that the difference between what an SDR does and what a call center does is a call center is economies of scale. It's as many people as efficiently as possible, highly scripted, very little thought process involved. Just do exactly what I tell you in specific ways. So it's really good for anything that can be monetized very quickly and is very transactional.
Yes, like TV, phone, and internet services.
Bingo. Or doing banking or credit cards or any sort of quick purchase. Anything that is a more evolved sales cycle, anything that requires, you know, real tailoring, individual, anything that requires education. And it's funny because even as I'm saying this, I'm describing it in my head, I'm thinking, wait a minute, I'm pretty sure the mortgage companies that were hitting me up were a call center, but they were doing this stuff.
I would also say a lot of it comes down to B2B versus B2C. So you're a lot more likely to have B2C call centers because they're making less money off of each
larger
transaction.
Scale.
And so it's all about volume. It's not about, and so they don't get any benefit from having a more kind of consultative sales process. The best you're going to get is like, you know, do you want the HBO package or not with your with your cable, right?
Here's why you should have our premier checking package.
Exactly. No, but you wouldn't do the same for B2B.
Yeah, B2B, something I have seen done B2B, like a calling scale is kind of like a lead gen program, like
Yeah.
where you're trying to kind of like just call a bunch of different places and, either like just kind of like ask for the product, or you're calling to kind of like get more information or something like that. But I think like, yeah, B2B definitely requires more of a consultative approach. And it
Yeah.
depends on your sales cycle too. Are you selling something that takes a couple, is your sales cycle 30 days, or is it going to take you like 6 months? Depends on the type of product that you're selling, and the type of customer that you're selling it to. If you're selling it to, a mom and pop shop and it's a smaller scale, that might take a couple weeks. But if you're selling to like a large chain distributor, like a Neiman Marcus or something like that, that's going to take a lot longer.
Yeah. But it is interesting. It's like when you do think about, so, I've worked in a couple of total boiler room kind of environments, and like my first real phone sales job was, I'm aging myself. This was like 10 years ago. We cold called realtors and sold them like that we would get them on the first page of Google so that we would manage Google ads for them. And that was run a lot more like it was outbound, but like an outbound call center, because it was like one call closes only. You were not ever allowed to call a person back. Like if you didn't have billing information within the first 12 minutes, your manager made you hang up the phone, like that kind of thing. Oh yeah. And let me tell you, getting somebody to give you the billing information on their credit card when you're pitching a product that they don't even understand most of the time, and they've never heard of you before, and you are not ever allowed to call them back. I mean, it was just completely insane. And that was one where it's like operated so like a call center, but was also a little bit more like outbound B2B sales. It just was,
That's interesting.
One call closes. I was I don't know. So I think there is some crossover there.
Well, I'm laughing because my only experience with a call center is I worked at the alumni call center at Santa Clara University, and brutal honesty, it's the only job I've ever rage quit. Full on, like.
Because you had to cold call people for donations.
Cold call people for donation. We had one night where the phone system just went completely screwy, and so we ended up calling the same like 30 people again and again and again.
Oh god.
And so I got this one lady, we knew this was going on, we were trying to fix it, and so I asked her, can you just hang on the phone for 2 seconds? I want to see if I can remove you from the system. The next day I call in, apparently she called back and filed a formal complaint against me because I had called her so many times. I literally walked out of the office like after I'd been told that I had been given the complaint. And like, well, it has to go in your file. I was like, great, I quit.
Yeah, the turnover rate in a call center, turnover rate in a call center is another beast. That
I could never do that. I can totally do SDR work. I could never do call center work.
So, but here's the deal. I think it comes down to process. And I bet you've learned this of like, if you've got a really, really dialed in process. And so that was one of the things that was amazing. And it wound up being some of the best selling experience I think I've ever had.
Yeah.
Because it was so formulaic, they had a really, really like clear and defined model for it. And so you learned this like formula.
Yeah, exactly.
Now I apply to like literally everything.
Yeah. When I call someone, if I'm cold calling someone, the way I do it is based on what I learned there. The way I overcome someone's objection. Acknowledge value question. I learned that there. I acknowledge it, add value, and then end on the question to keep leading them into it. It's like all these things I learned exactly from doing the same thing, something that's really repetitive, really, that's why like I've done a lot of trade shows with a lot of B2B, all the B2B sales I've done a lot of trade shows, and trade shows are also a really good way to learn how to sell a product really quickly because
without a doubt.
You pitch it over and over and over and over and over, and you get to hear, your colleagues pitching it and learning best practices. So, that kind of sales really gets you prepared to be able to be more of an independent salesperson. Because when you work for a startup, you might not have a manager watching you all day, every day, or, be able to have a coach help you throughout, different things. Whereas like when I was at the call center, my whole job was I had a headphone on and I would listen to people's calls, like while they were on the call, and then, like would try to coach them during it. And you know, it's depending on where you are, you have to kind of like figure out how to thrive in whichever type of environment.
So I am curious then, because I've been having this conversation recently with a couple of different people that are kind of starting at startups for a sales job.
Mm,
They're getting okay training and coaching, but not amazing. Like, what's
yeah.
your recommendation of if you're in one of those environments, like how do you learn this stuff? Like, where would you go? What would you kind of recommend to people to do?
Yeah, that's exactly what I actually like, you know, am looking at. One of the services that I offer is one-on-one coaching, for exactly that type of person, because, you know, I've been that person that I've been in an environment where I had zero training and I was like, I could easily drown here, but I had that 5 years of really solid experience that I could fall back on. But if you're just coming out of college and your first sales job is a startup, you are going to go in and probably freak out because you're not going to have someone giving you the basics that you need to learn. You might learn about the product and you might learn how to pitch on value, but you don't know the sales basics. So, you know, if you know, I think the first thing that someone should do is, you know, speak to their direct manager or their leadership team and just say, hey, this is how I'm feeling. What do you suggest? Can you offer more training? Or, you know, because there's a lot of startups that if they can't give you the direct training, they'll help you find a training program or, you know, a consultant or someone to help you. You know, when I first started at the first company I worked for, and I was, you know, the first outbound salesperson, I, you know, had a lot of things I didn't know how to do. You know, I didn't know how to forecast sales. I didn't know how to, you know, plan these things. I didn't know how to figure out what our conversion rate was or figure out what our sales cycle was. You know, I know how to do that now, but I have no idea how to do that then. So, you know, I went to my, you know, our vice president. I was like, look, I need help with these areas. And he's like, okay, let's see if we can find some training programs. So, you know, if you have a company who's wonderful like that, that's great. And then if you can, it's like, you know, join different groups, join Facebook groups, or, you know, like, I recently joined a Girl Boss community, and that's been really awesome. I've actually met, like, I think that's how I met you guys, was through that community. So you know, joining different communities, and finding like-minded people that you can connect with that want to support you, definitely do that. And then also, I mean, you can learn everything from Google. So if there's a part of, you know, that's how
it's so true.
It out. So it's
So
like
true.
doing something and you're like, I don't know how to do this. Google it. And you'll probably find like all kinds of articles about, you know, how to do it. But, you know, if you're in a place that doesn't have a lot of sales, able to give you a lot of sales training, is, you know, trying to find those resources outside. And then just ask for help. A lot of people are afraid to ask their managers and stuff for help, but you know, a lot of times they want to help you. And if you don't ask, they honestly may not even know that you need it.
They probably don't.
Yeah, they probably have no idea and think that you're doing just fine, but then in reality you're struggling and you're hating it, and then you quit, and then, you know, I'm sure they wouldn't want you to quit. It's much better to keep someone and try to train them up than to start from scratch.
Well, you know, and this, honestly, I think that's a great interview question.
Yeah.
To, like, when you're interviewing at a company and you're talking to the hiring manager, put this hypothetical to them. You know, hey, if I'm struggling with a specific skill or something like that, is that something where I would come to you and ask for additional training? Would you enable me to go out and get training somewhere else? Because there are a lot that actually, like, that's now a new interview question for me. I'm going to be asking everyone for the rest of my life, because I've worked with so many bosses that I go in there and they're like, well, why can't you figure it out? Just figure it out. Versus somebody who's like, yep, okay, I'm going to ask you to try to figure it out. And then once you've done that, then we'll dive in and we'll figure it out together. But that's a really good indicator of the culture that you're walking into. If they say, we frequently enable people, we'll let you expense a coach, or this. And more companies are doing learning and development stipends these days, where it's like it's like $200 a year. Sometimes it's not much, but it's something. And it shows they actually value it.
I think, you know, a company that's willing to, like, you know, put back into your development is a great place to be. Because there's a lot of places that don't,
without a doubt,
and they don't, you know, they don't care. They just want you to, especially being in sales, it's just like, I've seen salespeople be treated very indisposable. You know, it's like you're nothing but a number. A call center in a bigger company can have that feel that you're nothing but a number. That's why I think I like the startup and the smaller team a little bit better, because you really feel like what you're doing has an impact, but that also brings a whole new kind of stress. Yeah, you do see it. But then that also brings a whole other kind of stress, because, like, I've been the only salesperson. So it's like, if it's a slow part, it's all my fault, you know?
That
My
is
number is
stressful.
literally everyone's salary.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, I'm not
Oh,
selling.
God.
It's a lot. It's a lot of pressure. So
This is why I've never allowed myself to take a first salesperson job. I'm like, I do not.
I know.
I need to know I'm a number, and then other people have figured this out. Not doing it.
Yeah. So that, yeah.
So I am curious, as you think about kind of your role as a founder, and I know you're thinking about kind of building a collective of women that are doing kind of similar things. Like, what are some of the lessons you take from being a number on a sales team that you that are going to kind of impact how you build a team?
I think this is why I don't know, I realized I didn't want to work for anyone else, not too, like, probably about a year ago. And that's why I've been like building this up, is I wanted to be more in control of who I worked with and who I surrounded myself with. So,
Yeah.
I've worked with people in the past who, we don't understand each other. They may not understand me. It's not a great work environment. So that, I think I just want to have the ability to control who I work with and who I surround myself with. So, I want to bring on people who are hardworking, have a really strong work ethic, and, care about people, and also want to learn from mistakes. Because, I've made tons of mistakes in my career, but I don't look at them as terrible mistakes, because, I learn from everything. So, being able to like learn and grow is very important. And just like, anyone who just also kind of wants that kind of opportunity to kind of like take what they've learned at all these different places and be able to add value to different. That's why I don't want to work for just one company. I want to work for lots of different companies and consult for lots of different people, so that I can kind of add value everywhere. Because I think sales enablement and kind of putting sales processes in place, it can be a good type of thing for a consultant to do, and kind of come in with an outside and fresh perspective. Because when you're in the trenches and when you're in that sales team and you're doing those processes, it can get really murky. So, I kind of want to be that fresh pair of eyes for sales teams that are struggling. I hope that answered your question. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it totally did.
Well, I'm curious now, because I think we've all been on the sales team where you're in that murky situation.
Yeah.
And I think one of the more frustrating situations when you're a salesperson is sometimes it's the individual contributors that see that it's murky before leadership does. How do you convince leadership to open up and accept help, whether it's from you or from a consultant or something like that? Because I feel like that's the hardest sell you could ever make.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's, I think your question is, it's deep, because it's like, how do you convince leadership what is needed, to get the end result? Because it's like, they may be seeing that revenues are dropping, or that maybe that, new customer acquisition isn't happening as quickly, but chances are it's probably not the product. It's probably not, the people. It's probably just how the people are positioning it. And then, also how they're feeling. So I think it's just about, what I'm trying to do is just add a lot of value to the world. I'm just trying to put out, like, blog posts and content that's like informational and helpful, so that, those people in those positions and those leadership roles can see that and be like, oh yeah, that would actually be really helpful. Because, sales is not black and white anymore. It's very, very complex. There's so many different factors that go in, and people are influenced by more things they've ever been influenced before, ever, and your buyer is more educated than they've ever been. They could go on Google and read so many different reviews, compare your product to so many different other products. So, it's just kind of adding that value and kind of making them understand that, if you don't hire me, that's fine. But like, putting a sales enablement program and putting processes in place for your sales team is going to help your bottom line in the long run. But it's not a quick fix. So I think that's what a lot of people see is they want something done quickly.
That's the hard part.
Yeah, because it's not going to be done quickly. You know, it might take 30, 60, even 90 days for some of the campaigns to start working, or, you know, for some of the processes that they're putting in place, because, you know, it takes time to grow. So that's probably the really hardest part is being patient.
It also takes buy-in. And I think that's the other hard part is that sometimes you get management that's like, yeah, okay, like we know we need to do something new, but you can tell they aren't really bought into it. And so no one like really sticks. No one really sticks.
And their
with
idea
it.
of something new is like, let's give them a battle card.
Yeah. Let's give them.
It's like, or we'll do an offsite. We'll change the comp versus looking at it from, like you said, as a system, as a whole process. It's like, okay, you can't just fix this.
Yes.
Nothing.
Yeah. And a lot of it goes down to, let's change the comp. Let's put a contest in place. And it's like, it might fix a problem for a little bit, but you're just putting a Band-Aid on a situation that's bleeding, because you're not fixing
the bullet wound. Yeah.
You're not fixing the and I think that's you know, something that a lot of a mistake, you know, you asked me before, mistakes that startups make is one of those. It's not a long-term fix. It's easy to put Band-Aids over things. And then it ends up usually causing more problems in the long run. So if you
because you like cobble together all of these different sort of solutions, but they all, you know, each thing interacts with every single other thing. We don't always think through the entire system. And like, I think we see that all the time. It's like, we've all worked at those companies where like the instance of Salesforce has been, the Salesforce admin has like created new, custom fields to fix certain
how many
problems
lead
so that you
sources
have,
do you have?
Exactly.
Lead source A, B, and C plus campaign source.
Yes,
it's more like lead sources are like 20 different ones, and you're like, what is the difference between this and this? What does that even mean? Like,
which one's the most recent?
Like, what am I supposed to do with this one? That's another big problem. CRMs are great, but they're only as good as the process. Because if everybody's doing something different, your reporting's not going to be accurate. You know, you're not going to understand what everybody else is doing. So crazy.
I love this. I feel like the whole theme for this episode is going to be like, believe in the process, right? Like, figure out your process and then have faith in it.
That's the sweatshirt.
Yeah.
Figure out your process. On the backside, trust your process.
Trust your process. There you go. Sorry, we're like planning merch for the other side of sales. And so we pretty much think in t-shirt taglines these days.
Available soon on othersideofsales.com.
Well, this has been awesome. So we have a lightning round of questions to ask you, but before we start there, how can listeners get in touch with you if they want to learn more about your business and learn more about getting help from you?
Okay. Well, my website is www.viragoventures.com, and that's VIRAGO ventures.com. And then all the social sites, it's just that. So at Virago Ventures at Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. And then, my personal Instagram is It's Sara Beam. If you want to follow my personal Instagram, but you can follow me at Virago Ventures, preferably.
All your escapades chasing your husband around the comedy clubs of LA.
And dog.
And the dog.
And the dog. That's the important part. Like, that's pretty much my entire Instagram feed.
That is my Instagram feed.
Dogs.
Dogs.
Yeah.
And we'll put all of that in the show notes as well. So you don't have to worry about writing it down if you're driving. Please don't crash.
Sorry.
Yes. Okay. So for the lightning round, don't think too much about these. We tend to go pretty quick.
Okay.
What's your morning routine?
Morning routine. Wake up, go walk my dogs, and then get coffee and take a shower, meditate, sometimes work out if workouts in there, but and then I usually get started working, but pretty much dogs, coffee, and meditating.
I like it.
Perfect.
Pick one person who's had a significant impact on your career.
Probably my boss, his name was Ben Kaleko. He was a very good mentor for me for a few years. So he's great.
Wonderful. What's your pump up song?
Formation by Beyonce, for sure.
Oh, yes.
There we go.
Yeah. Like for
That's
sure.
very good.
Yeah. Like, yeah.
Done. I now I'm gonna go listen to that. All right. What's one thing you wish you'd learned earlier?
One thing I wish I learned earlier, that everybody's not like me. So, I can't expect everyone to work exactly like me. I can't expect everyone to be motivated by the same things I am. And everybody's different. So not everybody's like you. Yeah.
That's very good. What's your favorite sales book?
Favorite sales book. I read Wolf of Wall Street recently. That was pretty good. By the Wolf of Wall Street guy.
Oh yeah.
He wrote a book. That was pretty interesting. And I don't know if it's a sales book, but Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg is a really impactful book for me.
Yeah. That's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's one way someone could have been a better ally to you?
Better ally. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question.
Fair enough.
Can I pass?
Fair enough. Okay.
I don't know.
How about this one? What's one way you work to be a better ally to others?
Learning from your mistakes. So I think just knowing when I haven't been the nicest person or the best ally, or and just learning from that and keeping that in mind and remembering not to act like that again.
Great.
All right. And what's your guilty pleasure after a bad day?
Guilty pleasure after a bad day. Oh, probably watching the same stuff on Netflix over and over again. It used to be Friends and they took it away, and now it's The Office. So yeah, I'll just literally I've watched probably the Friends and Office 10 times over and over again. It's just, the same thing, but it's comforting.
It's comforting.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, this has been fabulous. We really appreciate you joining us. We will, of course, let you know when everything goes live. And for everybody out there listening, just a reminder, follow us on all of the socials, Other Side of Sales, Other Side Sales on Twitter. Please share with your friends, send the links to them, review the podcast on whatever platform you listen to it. And of course, if there's somebody you want to nominate for the podcast, please go to the Other Side of Sales, othersideofsales.com and nominate them. We would love to have them on. And thanks for listening.